Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So today I want to talk a little bit about collecting. Well, retro video game collecting, especially, since that's typically what I like to collect. Well, I like to collect toys too, but I want to talk about setting the limits because I see this happening. I see this a bunch of videos going around, and a lot of retro collectors they start to bring this topic up, a few times, and that's about where do I draw the line? What am I going to, what am I going to collect? When am I going to stop collecting? Where is this collecting going to go? Because I've talked about this before. Like, we only have a certain amount of space for our collection. I got my little man cave down here. I got my shelf back there. And I remember, probably, I don't know. Well, I've been buying this stuff for a long time, but specifically like about 4 or 5 years ago, I remember constantly going on the hunt looking for Atari games and always like, going to the flea markets, going on eBay and all other stuff and just buying these lots of games where I can, try and build up my collection. And, at some point I started to say, how long am I going to keep doing this? How much am I going to spend? Where am I going to put all this stuff? And then I also started thinking about what was the reason behind it? What was I buying it for? And like some of it was to play. Like I love playing certain games, like Keystone Capers for the Atari 2600. Grabbing certain Atari games, I wanted to play them, and and that was it. But then I also found myself just buying games because I thought, hey, it'd be cool just to collect these things, just to have them sitting around. But after a while, you start to wonder, like, am I ever going to play these games? Are they, what am I supposed to do with them? Are they just going to sit there and collect dust? And I kind of had the same problem with Transformers. I love Transformers. I grew up in the 80s as watching the Transformers and G.I. Joe. And, there was all these Transformer toys I wish I had when I was a kid. I had a bunch, but, there's always more I wish I had. And so when I got older, I started to, go to the toy stores, like the comic book stores and places like that sold them, and was paying ridiculous amounts of money, and of course eBay, and buying them. And I was having a lot of fun doing that. And then at some point, I started realizing that I could only put so many on display. Realistically, I can't just keep buying these things, and they just started ending up in boxes. And as I moved out of a house into another house or into another apartment or wherever I was moving on in life, I'm taking all these boxes with me and then just shoving them in a crawl space somewhere. And, I eventually got to that point where I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to be a little bit more picky and choosy, I guess you want to say it. That's kind of a weird sounding word, picky and choosy. Anyways, yeah, what I'm getting at is I started to realize that I need to be a little bit more selective on what I buy and not just keep buying them. And then at some point I started to like go through my collection and be like, okay, I need to start to get rid of some of this stuff. And and that's what a lot of collectors they start to do as well. Like Willie from Arcade USA, he likes to do these little bundle packages where he packs up a box, puts in a bunch of stuff like this. He sent me this, Cubert. He gets all these things, and then he eventually, puts stuff onto his own man cave or his own display. But then after a while, starts to realize I got a lot of stuff kind of kicking around. I'm not going to use it. Let's just package it up. So like, start to pass it on. And you also need to think of being selective, as in when I start to go to places like a flea market. I kind of have my little Rolodex in my head of the games that I have and the games that I want. Now, for the Atari 2600, it's getting a little bit tough because I do have a lot. And, I have a lot of my favorites. There's maybe like a small handful now that I might not have. And same with the Intellivision. I have, I have my little collection of Intellivision games. I would say the majority of the newer games, like the homebrew games, seem interesting, but I don't know if there's anything from the old collection. And then even ColecoVision and Atari 7800, probably the only system that I'm probably don't have a lot of cartridges for yet, and I say yet, and I don't know if that'll ever be, is my the Atari 8-bit. I have the Atari 400, which plays the little 8-bit cartridges, and there's a ton of them. There's a ton of games for that system. I don't have an Atari 5200. I don't think I'm ever going to get one. I do have the Odyssey 2 now, which, again, I got to a point where I'm like, how many of these games am I going to want to pick up? I mean, the system is great. I mean, it's interesting, but the games themselves are not that interesting. Some of them are kind of blasé. Some of them are very simple. And I don't want to, fill up space and start buying all these games just for the sake of buying it. So, at some point you just kind of, you got to think, how far am I going to take this? And of course, I've also been talking about, well, I've shown this a few times, these things, these devices, not specifically this one, but we're starting to get all these new, like My Arcade is coming out with a ton. I'm seeing it all the time. I'm seeing it on like different YouTubers, and I'm seeing it on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. There's all these My Arcade things coming out that play Atari games, they play Nintendo games, they play every single game under the sun. And I start to question, are people buying these things because they actually are going to play them? Or are they buying these things because they want to collect it? They want this piece of hardware to put on their shelf. Make it look good, put it back there. And, perhaps even, perhaps my camera there, perhaps even some YouTubers are buying it just for content purposes. And they're like, I need to talk about something, so I'm going to buy that brand new thing that just came out, and I'm going to do a video on it. And then what? Then what do they do with it? They either collect it, they put it on their shelf, or they make a video saying, I'm going to give this away. But the point is, they got to, make a decision and pass it on. But primarily what I'm talking about is with people like me, and maybe even you, who are collecting things because maybe of nostalgia reasons, or you just want to build a collection. I mean, you can collect everything. I collect stuff. I collect things like cards. I play card games and stuff. I like cards. You can collect anything. You can collect homebrews. I mean, this is an Intellivision homebrew. You can collect this stuff. And it costs money, and you really have to be dedicated in knowing what you're buying and why you're buying it and what you're going to do with it. You can go out and try and find the original stuff, the old Atari things. I see a lot of people on Facebook, specifically in the Atari groups and all that, who say they have like 7 or 8 different Ataris, and they have like, I got like 4 different Intellivisions, and I got like, so this type of stuff they collect a lot of, and they keep buying it and buying more and buying more. And then you got to wonder, at what point do you have to set a limit and say, okay, well, maybe I have enough stuff. Maybe I need to slow down. Maybe I need to be a little more selective and not buy as much. But at the same time, it is a lot of fun. I mean, I do love the hunt, the gather, the going out to flea markets, looking even just for things like Nintendo games. Like I got this Dragon Warrior here, which I've shown on a few videos. Just finding just rare treasures, finding things like the Atari 7800 stuff. You never know what you're gonna find. Old video game books, programming books. I remember buying this in an antique store. Really interesting, because I do remember when I was a kid trying to find these things all the time, and I bought it because, hey, why not? So yeah, I just thought it was interesting just to talk about, because I think a lot of us, we just like to collect, and we can kind of let it get out of hand sometimes and end up with just too much stuff. We don't know what we're doing with it. We don't know where it's gonna go, and oftentimes it ends up in boxes. It ends up in in a shelf somewhere. You toss it out, garage sale. Who knows? I mean, it really makes you wonder. And I think the point of this video is just to try and make people think a little bit more selective before they just jump in and start buying things, because we can tend to get carried away, especially when we call ourselves collectors. retro collectors. There's so much out there, and you can get it at bargain prices. You could get it at the highest prices. You can go to the expos, and it's everywhere. And you gotta set some limits. Anyways, I just thought it'd be fun to talk about this topic because I'm starting to see it a little bit more. I'm starting to see people quitting the collecting thing, saying collecting is not fun anymore, complaining about it. And yeah, we just really need to start to get ourselves into check and say, hey, maybe we need to just figure out what we really want, what we're really going to use, and why we want it. Anyways, let me know what you think. I always like to hear what you have to say. Throw some comments down below. I hope you subscribe. Talk to you later.